It says I'm live. Hopefully you can hear me. So if there's anybody out there, say hello. Let me turn this one off. Hugh, hello. Oops. Just sort this sound out. Paul, hello. That says there's 11 people watching. Is there anybody out there that went to the cinema to see the documentary? I know it isn't being shown everywhere. Thanks, you. So I got back about David. Hello. I got back about half an hour ago. Lila. Yep. Hopefully people will be joining as we go along. Michael. Hugh. Can't say that I'm excited about seeing it. I was excited. Lila, it looked and sounded a bit bootleg. I know what you mean. There were I counted 24 people at the screening in Cheltenham, which I thought was good. Lila, do they use Elvis music? Somebody said that they weren't allowed to use the TV special in the documentary. That's not correct. There were plenty of excerpts from the special, outtakes as well. If I have to give a mark out of 10 on my initial impression, which might change when I watch it again, then I'd say 7. There were elements of it that for me were disappointing, but I have to say the price and making the effort to go was worth it for one thing. It ends with the full performance of If I Can Dream, and to see Elvis on a huge screen belting that out gave me goosebumps. It was worth it just to see that. Poor renditions by contemporary artists. Yeah, there were only really a couple. And only one complete performance of Blue Suede Shoes. The two contemporary artists, basically, I've never heard of either of them. One of them, I assume, is an American country performer, and the other was I've already forgotten where he was from. Latin America. As I said, I've never heard of either of them. Now, yeah, the cinema version is longer than the TV one, but obviously I don't know what's been cut out of the TV one. So the cinema version ran for 2 hours. Hugh, the marketing's been pretty bad. They didn't get clearance at first for using footage. Yeah, that's all been sorted out. So there's plenty of Elvis footage and music in the special. It would have been a bit stupid to make a documentary about the TV special and not have any excerpts from it. Hootie and the Blowfish. I've heard the name. Right. I mean, they were fine. They gave their opinions of Elvis, all very glowing, very good. Some of the dancers from the special that's still alive, they were interviewed, and various other people connected with it in different ways. Pictures, Will, how was the picture and sound quality? It was a little bit, I suppose, because it's on a huge cinema screen, it really showed up some of the defects in the pictures, but it wasn't bad, perfectly watchable. As I say, to see Elvis on a huge cinema screen performing and singing was really something. I wish that they would put That's the Way It Is and On Tour on the cinema. Lila, I always think Scotty Moore looks well peeved once Elvis takes the guitar off him. It does sort of relegate him, doesn't it? Strumming an acoustic. But I'm glad Elvis did take it. He proved that he could play the guitar. Now, Anthony, is it for one day? I believe so, yeah. One day and only in certain cinemas. So a lot of people won't get to see it on the cinema. I'm sure when they finally do a DVD of it, all the extras will probably be put on there. So the first thing that you have to remember is this, although obviously fans are going to be the ones to watch it, this is MTV's behind this. And so they want to appeal to a wider audience. So it kicks off with an overview of Elvis's career, which I wasn't too keen on. It did look to me as though every time they were going to use a picture of him, they must have gone through the whole reel of photographs and found the one moment where he doesn't look happy or he looks a bit off. Can't really explain it, but you'll see it when it comes. So at the beginning, I was sort of feeling a bit deflated. I thought, well, why are they using these pictures when there are fantastic pictures of him that they could use? And they always seem to go for the one where, you know, he's looking away, something's just not quite right about the picture. So they did spend a bit too long on that, I think. They explained Steve Binder's background, which is actually interesting. Paul, some cinemas have it for 2 days. All right. Oh, I'll check if it's on for 2 days at Cheltenham. I might go again. Why not take the chance while it's on the cinema? And then they sort of went into the background of what was going on in America at the time. So the Kennedy and Martin Luther King assassinations and the riots in Vietnam and all this kind of thing. And it sort of showed how irrelevant Elvis had become. So they're showing you all this, and then they're showing him in Paradise of One Star singing to dogs and things like this. Lila, does it stop at 68? It stops at 68, yeah. It's specifically about the 68 special. There's a brief mention of, I'll come to later. So they set the scene. I think they take a bit long setting the scene. Steve Binder's very interesting. And it's very clear he absolutely did not like the Colonel. At various points he calls him a bully, a liar, a charlatan, a confidence trickster. Said he didn't care one bit about Elvis's career as an artist, could not have cared less. All he was about was power and money, and he would bully and he would lie and cheat to get his way. So he's very much the villain of the piece. At the beginning, they sort of introduce the main characters. So Elvis is the star, Steve Binder is the hero, Parker, and it says the villain. Lila, he is. I have to say I agree. I think Parker's totally overrated. I think Parker was totally out of his league. He landed the biggest star in the world, didn't have a clue what to do. And Elvis outgrew him within a year. But Elvis just never had the self-confidence, the self-belief, or the guts to stand up to him, unfortunately. So I agree with Binder. That's always been my view of Parker. So they get into there's a lot of interesting little details about how the special was put together. And at just about every turn, Parker tried to interfere and change it to his Christmas show, Christmas songs. Even as far as with If I Can Dream, they leave that to the very end where they explain how the song came to be written. Saying that when Elvis, they'd gone through the song a few times and Elvis was very keen on it, and Parker walked out saying something like, "Over my dead body, is Elvis going to sing that crap?" So, but when it really takes off, of course, is when they start they sort of get to the filming of the special. So they start bringing Elvis into it, and they start bringing in people who actually worked on the special with him to tell their stories. And Steve Binder said, at the start, he was sort of, when he was told that he had the chance to produce this show with Elvis, he was totally underwhelmed. He said, I wasn't an Elvis fan. I never listened to his music. And Elvis was largely irrelevant at the time. And he said what changed his mind was meeting Elvis. Mal, hello. And they sort of really hit it off, became very close. It's a damn shame that Elvis didn't tell Colonel to bugger off and ask Binder to be his artistic manager. What could have been? And he said that Elvis was so excited about the special and everything about it, and he said he was the easiest star he'd ever worked with. Really enthusiastic, keen, he never complained. Like I always say, Elvis and the Colonel were a bit backward and green when it came to decisions. Yeah, I agree. Both had limited ideas on the entertainment industry. Yep, I agree. That sums it up. It needed somebody to step in on Elvis's behalf. Of course, that probably would have been his mother had she lived. There is a quote from her that's something like, "That man is the devil," something like that, about Parker, that she's supposed to have said. Hugh, Parker is totally overpraised, but I also think Binder has inflated some of his own importance and significance, although Binder would have been good for Elvis. Maybe, but Binder was right. Binder was far better for Elvis. The Colonel was a bully and a liar and a charlatan. Well, it was a great stepping stone to American sound the following January. It gave Elvis a real injection. Yep. Yeah, again, of course, at American Sound Studio, there was a very strong artistic director. And whenever Elvis had a strong artistic director put in front of him, he just soared to the challenge. I was trying to think if there were any stories that I hadn't heard before. I think it all depends on whether you've read the book on the making of the documentary that Steve Binder produced a few years back. Some of the dancers had some interesting things to say. I don't want to sort of spoil it for anyone who wants to go into it. So, as I said, overall, a 7 out of 10. They took too long with the introduction, I think, but they did set the scene. The way they set the scene, for me, it made Elvis feel a bit average. So, be interested to see what everybody else thinks when they see it. Led Zeppelin's Peter Grant would have exploded Elvis. Literally on the stage. There were so many artists and people throughout his career that wanted to work with him. And I'm sure Parker put the kibosh on everything. As Binder says, Elvis gave him his number to contact him, and when he tried, Parker had put a block that, they weren't to speak again. So there's a good selection of the performances and some of the outtakes. They sort of highlight Elvis's sense of humor, his humility as a performer. They all said, he never took himself seriously. He never tried to make out he was somebody special. They interviewed, when Elvis sits down on the edge of the stage to sing Memories between the two girls, they're actually sisters, and they interviewed one of them, and it's quite funny when you look at their faces as he's singing, because you always look at Elvis, but you look at their faces. They couldn't believe it. But there were things like when Parker was absolutely against the sit-down shows on the stage, and then he was against having an audience. So when Steve Binder said, you know, we're going to put some tickets out to get an audience, he said, give me the tickets, I'll sort that out. And comes the day, there's nobody there. He hadn't done anything. So they had to race around and grab people who worked at NBC and in a cafe nearby and ringing people up, come, bring your partner, bring anybody, so they could fill the auditorium. And throughout, of course, it's not quite like as it's depicted in the film, but I think the film did it very well. They have artistic license to sort of big up some things. But Parker's insistence that there be a Christmas song did get mentioned quite a few times, and the sort of things that they did to get around that. So yeah, it's worth seeing. It's not perfect, but I was trying to think, will it encourage any non-fans to find out more? And I don't know. Will any non-fans really want to sit down and watch the documentary? So I don't think it will make any new fans. They did make a point at least twice that I can remember of saying that Elvis's style was a fusion of black music from the blues and rhythm and blues, of gospel and of country and western, and they did sort of emphasize the point that it was the three elements being fused together that created something totally new and unique. I think there was a danger from the Elvis film that it almost looked like Elvis was just copying black music and he was the white guy doing it, which of course is totally the wrong thing. Whenever they say, you know, Elvis ripped off black musicians, I always think, well, show me this black musician that looks, sounds and moves and dresses like Elvis before Elvis did it. There isn't one. Elvis was unique. So I don't know if anybody's got any questions that I can try and answer. It didn't feel like 2 hours. It went by quite quickly. There was a false ending, and half the audience got up and left. So Elvis sings If I Can Dream, it finishes, and then the credits start to roll, and people started to get up and leave. And I thought, well, I'll wait till the credits finish. And the credits finish, it fades to black, and then Steve Binder reappears and sort of says, you know, thank you for coming along and how much he enjoyed making it, etc. And then it says a few deleted scenes. So I think there were 3 deleted scenes that they showed. And then there was the full performance of Blue Suede Shoes by the American singer, whose name I can't remember. So half the audience missed that because they'd already left. Hugh, that's what happened during the intermission in The Sound of Music. People left thinking the Nazis won that one. I did think it was a bit odd. They should have said, you know, wait for a surprise or stay seated or don't leave, something. I didn't rush out because I was getting the bus back and it wasn't due. So I thought, well, the longer I can sit here, the longer I don't have to sit out in the rain. Well, unfortunately, there's nothing new on Elvis we used to grab onto. The story's exhausted. Even the newly released live albums are the same set lists. Yeah, that is a problem. is it is sad. Somebody said, you know, with all these FTD releases and that, there's never been a better time to be an Elvis fan. And I thought, well, actually, no. When he was alive, it was better, because we always had that anticipation. What was he going to do next? Was he going to come to the UK? What was his next album going to be? What was his next single going to be? What songs was he going to record? And of course, that's gone. There's very little now that can surprise us, unless they find some long lost tape somewhere, which is still possible. So we have to accept that Elvis is the past. But one of the artists, it's a shame they didn't get some big names in. And they did say, you know, that Elvis influenced everybody, whether they realise it or not. So it's a sort of, it is a game of two halves. The first half I was a bit deflated by, but once the Elvis performances kick in and they're actually making the special, then it lifts it to a new level. And as I said, the chance to see Elvis sing "If I Can Dream" on a cinema screen was worth going just for that. So, David, we should receive our Great Thou Art this week. Yeah, I've not heard anything. I'll have to check and see if the money's been taken, because that's normally a sign that it's on the way. Seems like we've been waiting forever. I've tried to sort of ease back for a couple of months. Got a lot of expenses lately, but I still see things that I have to have. So I recently got a stereo, Elvis for Everyone, the UK, really nice clean copy, red spot, so I had to get that. Live, please tell me Dave Grohl wasn't in it. No, he wasn't in it. But it was a shame that somebody that, you know, that I knew wasn't there. It would be nice to have a couple of big stars saying a piece about him. Dave Grohl has taken over from Bono from documentary appearances. Bono. I have to say, Bono is one artist I really don't like. This is just me personally speaking, and it doesn't mean anything because who am I? But for me, Bono is a man who in his head is far greater than he really is. Although, are you two still going? They seem to have disappeared into oblivion. Oops. So, either everyone on the stage in the 68 special past, even the guy with the tambourine. It's shocking when you think how long ago it was. I think they had, was it 3 of the dancers? I can't, not a chance of remembering their names. But the blonde one that dances with him in the Let Yourself Go sequence, she was into, she spoke. And of course, as they said, they all had great fun recording that scene. And the TV company and the promoters refused to have it in the special. They ordered it to be cut out. It was too much. There you go. Susan Henning, thanks you. My memory for names lately is hopeless. Here, the tambourine player was Lance Legault, who played Colonel Decker in the A-Team. So the guy who played the tambourine, what was his name? Who played the tambourine? I can't even remember. It's hard to know. I didn't really have any expectations going in. So it's worth seeing. It isn't fantastic. As I said, there are some things in it that I didn't like. Hugh Lance Legault. Oh, was the tambourine player, right? Why, there's Steve Binder 90, something like that, yeah. Yeah, this was probably the last chance to get him on. Although he looked okay, and he sounded okay, he's bright. As I said, at the end of the thing, they gave him a little piece to come on and say, you know, thank you and how much he enjoyed making it. Yeah, when you think everybody that on that, probably the majority of people who were involved in that show are dead now. So this was probably the last chance to speak to them. I was glad they told the story of how If I Can Dream came to be. As I said, the Colonel wanted to end with a Christmas song, which neither Steve Binder nor Elvis wanted. And so Steve went to speak to Earl Brown, who was the musical director, and he said, you know, we've all got to know Elvis over these weeks, what he thinks about things, how he sees what's going on in America. Can you write a song that sort of sums it all up? And he came up with If I Can Dream. So Elvis has got songwriter credits on some songs that he obviously didn't write. And that was Parker's doing, of course, to get more money. But perhaps If I Can Dream is one that Elvis should have got some credit on, because as they made clear, this was based on Elvis's own thoughts and feelings about what was going on. David, the TV special was a massive success. It certainly was. It relaunched Elvis. It made Elvis relevant again. It showed that he could still do it. And as they said, you know, he sang old songs from the 50s, but with the new instrumentation and Elvis's new power that he put behind them, they became new songs. David, can you shed any light on A Little Less Conversation? Some say it was included, some say not. They didn't mention it. Now, I'm trying to remember. From memory, there was an instrumental recorded. So there were some questions that weren't really answered that I would have had. So they never mentioned this conversation. And my memory is that it was recorded as an instrumental, so maybe it was going to be used as some music to set a scene somewhere. See, another question that I've always had in the gospel section: why on earth are there wheelbarrows and scaffolding? So my thought has always been, originally they were going to do working on the building. Then suddenly that makes sense, but that's never been mentioned, because I can't see any other reason for that set. Hugh, If I Can Dream's reputation status has only increased. Absolutely. Yes. If you search on YouTube reactions to If I Can Dream, you'll see a lot of people who aren't Elvis fans, who've never heard him, reacting to If I Can Dream, and it's just universal praise and surprise at the power and the, you know, Elvis's voice and the way he puts the song across. And So it's a song that is absolutely as relevant and as modern today. I always find it strange that he never sang it again. David, we have better outtakes now. I could put a better show together. Oh, another little interesting thing that Steve Binder said. The special, of course, was an hour, and he said with the television adverts, it meant that it was about 47 minutes of actual show. But he said he produced a 90-minute version, and he tried to persuade NBC and Singer to pay for the extra half hour, and they refused. So he put it on the shelf in the vaults. And they said in 1977, when Elvis died, they wanted to show the special. So they sent somebody to the vaults, and he picked up the 90-minute version without realizing. And that's how the 90-minute version came out. And it's now the one that's always shown. So it had the bordello scene, and it had extra footage from the 4 shows they recorded on the stage. So I thought that was good. I wonder what happened to the iconic Viking guitar that Elvis played. Now that, yeah, who was it that bought that? One Star bought it and presented it to another. And then I believe it was up for sale again recently, but who was it? I can't think. Lila, nothing worse than hearing other artists murdering If I Can Dream. If I Can Dream is a song. When you hear perfection and you see perfection, leave it alone. It's always been said that Elvis wouldn't record a Roy Orbison song because he said you can't do it better than Roy Orbison. Nobody will do If I Can Dream better than Elvis. Leave it alone. Fortunately, I think Elvis's performance of that song is so incredible that it scares most other artists away from even touching it. David, I remember discovering Tiger Man on the Flaming Star album. Also, yeah, they do include a clip of Tiger Man in the documentary. Of course, now we're a bit spoiled because we've got all the outtakes, all the footage. Paul, Billy Idol, right? Now, wasn't that guitar sold again recently? Tony, nobody would sing it like Elvis. No, absolutely not. And if I was a singer, I wouldn't go anywhere near it because you'd be compared to him and you're going to fall miserably flat no matter how good you are. Well, if this documentary does come out on DVD, will you buy it? I will, because I'm a bit of a completist. Although, would I actually watch it? I would like to see it again, just to see if my opinion of it changes. But probably it would end up sitting on the shelf and not touching it again. David, is it in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame? What, the guitar? I don't think so. I'm sure it was sold again recently. Or is my memory failing me yet again? Don't know. I'll have to look at that later. So I'm not sure when it's actually being shown on television. I know it's in August. Probably around the 16th, you would think. So I will watch it. Be interesting to see what they leave out. I assume the part with the deleted scenes isn't going to be included. But I don't know how long the television version is. Here, I believe it's August 15th in the US and 16th everywhere else on Paramount Plus. Right. Does MTV still exist? I assume it does, because their logo was on it, so you would think that they would show it. So I shall sail the high seas for that one, I think, if you know the right website to look at. You 16th and 17th. All right. I wonder if it's appeared already. I didn't look. There are certain websites that a lot of films appear on before they're even on at the cinema, if you know where to find them. Don't tell anybody, but I watch all the latest films on there. Here, MTV still exists, affiliated. Oh, right, with Paramount Plus. Right, they're Behind the Music series is shown on there. That, yeah, somebody did make the point of saying, you know, this was the first MTV Unplugged. Lila, so the Las Vegas years were the immediate rebound of this special for Elvis. I think the immediate rebound, as somebody already mentioned, was the Memphis Sound Studio sessions. And what an incredible period when you think about it, from the 68 special, Memphis Sound Studios, Vegas. Elvis must have been sailing on top of the world at that point. If only they'd gone Vegas, done his American tour, world tour. Just imagine what would have happened. Hugh, Sinatra and the Seekers were unplugged before Elvis did the 68 special. Can you say Sinatra was ever plugged? And the Seekers, weren't they acoustic anyway? It's semantics, I suppose. But Sinatra and the Seekers unplugged didn't have the impact that the 68 special had. I mean, the only thing they said about Elvis after the 68 special was to say that, you know, Elvis's enthusiasm sort of waned in the 70s and Parker reasserted his control over him. Somebody, I can't think who it was, said that had Steve Binder been Elvis's manager from that point on, he probably wouldn't have died in 77. Now, of course, you can't know that. Elvis had a lot of health problems, but they may be right. Obviously, things would have been very different. David, favourite 3 songs from it? There was only really one complete performance, and that was If I Can Dream. So that has to be number 1. Of the others, I've always had a thing for the performance of Lordy Miss Claudie. And One Night. So they show excerpts from both songs. I mean, they're quite, you know, they're not short excerpts, but If I Can Dream is the only song that's shown in its entirety. One of the dancers says, you know, that she could always see in Elvis's eyes that he was about to crack a joke or do something silly. She's just had that way about him that there's always fun. He was, you know, So I like that. So if anyone's still got the chance to see it at the cinema, it is worth it. As I said, to see him perform these songs on a huge cinema screen is quite something. There's enough there to make it worthwhile. And of course, we need to support these things, because if they fall totally flat, they're not going to do this again. Lila, so there's a 9-year corridor from the special to his death. These days, Elvis could have easily had a world tour. Yep, Shane was a victim of the time period. I think Elvis was up for a world tour back then. We know in 1977 he was definitely making plans to come to the UK. That's been confirmed by several people. But Elvis had the opportunity to do it, but it's hard to know because we weren't there. We have to rely on what people tell us. The impression we always get is that Parker was the stumbling block. Tony, what was your opinion of the book Elvis, What Happened? I probably have an odd opinion. Now, I remember when it was announced it was coming out, of course, and Elvis was still alive. I got a copy of it, and I read it. How old was I? 12, 11, 12. And of course, I remember the Sun newspaper, which anyone that doesn't know the Sun newspaper was there was no news in the Sun. It was sort of over the top nonsense most of the time. And they ran a big thing about it, and they picked the worst picture of Elvis they could possibly find, fat and 40 type of thing, and published some lurid extracts. Now, I have heard quite recently somebody was saying that the bodyguards that wrote it weren't exactly happy with what was done, because names escape me. Was it Rupert Murdoch? Somebody that was behind all this said to the ghostwriter that actually wrote the book, make it more lurid, make it more, blow it up, exaggerate. So I read it, and there are some things in there that you think, ooh, a bit of a shock. But even then, as a kid, I was just impressed with Elvis, the human being. He was an ordinary human being in an incredible situation. And I actually thought I was even more impressed by him after reading that book, which probably surprises people. Some things in there where of course, this is the stories we're told. He's lost his temper, or he's done something this or that. And I thought, well, I don't blame him. If I was in his position, I'd felt like that. And, there are some good stories in there, and they all make the point of saying that, they loved him, and they were trying to help him see what he's doing to himself and where he'd gone wrong. I came out of the book admiring him even more. Hugh, What Happened is salacious and sensationalized and written with a slant that doesn't rely on first-hand accounts. Right. As I was saying, it's been said, and I wish I could remember who, that the ghostwriter was told to exaggerate it, make it more than was actually there originally. Does anybody remember who that was? Has anybody else come across that? So, here I can imagine Elvis playing either Earl's Court, Wembley Arena, or the Royal Festival Hall. which is where most US artists performed. I'm trying to dig into my memory because it was mentioned, the venue that they were looking at. If you find the interview, why can I never remember any names these days? Elvis's road manager, and his name's completely blanked out of my brain. He said in an interview, of course, as we know, Elvis was due to start a new tour on the 17th of August. And he said when the tour ended, the day after that, he was already booked on a flight to London to go for the negotiations with the arena, the venue, that they were going to book for a period for Elvis to perform in London. Priscilla's confirmed that Elvis told her that he was going to do London. And Elvis's costume designer has confirmed that Elvis told him, I need some new costumes for London. So it's come from enough reliable sources that Elvis had decided that this was it. Probably 1978, I should imagine, he was going to perform in London. Joe Esposito, he would have played the old Wembley Stadium and sold out. He certainly would have. Can you imagine the pandemonium of Elvis actually coming here? The crowds everywhere he would have gone. Probably I would have never got anywhere near the place, because tickets would have just gone like that, and of course all the stars and the celebrities and would have all turned out. Here by 1977 it would probably have been a disaster. Well, I don't know, because if you look, every time Elvis had this challenge, he far exceeded anything that we could have expected. All I can keep saying is somebody said, because I can't remember who it was. But they said, after Elvis What Happened came out, Elvis was determined that he was going to prove them wrong. I think I'm going to have to start writing things down. My memory is disappearing along with my eyes. I will be 59 in October, and everything was fine until recently. Now everything's starting to fall to pieces. Paul, I believe Elvis honestly didn't realise how big he was. No, I agree. That's why he didn't have the confidence, self-confidence. I don't think he realised. It's hard to think that. Elvis live at Wembley. It's funny because I remember at school art class once, teacher set us a project to design an album cover, and I did Elvis live from Wembley. So I based it on sort of a That's the Way It Is period jumpsuit, live from Wembley, and then the songs that in my head he would do. Lila, don't they interview Elvis fans and That's the Way It Is? I can't remember. So that's my thoughts on this documentary. I suppose if you haven't read Steve Binder's book, then you might get more out of it. I just kept thinking how great it would be to see the 68 special, or That's the Way It Is, or on tour, on a big cinema screen with the big sound. Tony, if only Elvis Live from Wembley really happened. Absolutely. And I think because the reception would have been so incredible, that a world tour would have come after. David, he did Vegas, so why not Albert Hall season? I mean, at the end of the day, Elvis was the star. If Elvis had put his foot down and says, I'm doing this, then it would have happened. So it's just a shame that he never had the ability to do that. But when you think where he came from, his background, his family background, I can understand that it was very daunting. You know, if you don't have that, if you don't have almost that arrogance of belief in yourself, to sort of say, no, we're doing this, I'm doing this. There's so many what ifs, what could have beens. But I guess that's true in every life at different levels. A ticket for Wembley would have been a whole £1.50. Well, they said that Elvis, wanted the tickets to be affordable. You think these days, what they charge for a concert ticket, and yet Elvis's tickets were always very cheap. Elvis Live at Wembley, 5 sold-out dates, stream on. I imagine what the tickets would have cost, because demand would far outstrip supply, and people would pay just about anything, I think, to have seen him. Hugh Elvis was one of the most expensive touring acts in the 70s. There was a massive entourage. I know that they're probably even bigger these days because of all the special effects and stage props and things that people seem to use now. But there was a lot of people behind, on the stage and in the background to make those shows happen. Who would have been the support act? Not some hack American comedian. That's an interesting question. Of course, they couldn't use an American comedian because he would be totally unknown over here. So who would they have got? Not Ken Dodd. Or Jimmy Savile. Oh my God. You think, even if he was a big Elvis fan. Hugh Sinatra was £7.50 top price at the Albert Hall. Yeah. Now this is where somebody comes on and says, yes, but in 1977, £7.50 was a lot of money. I was on £5 a week. Like the Tom O'Connor. I don't think he was around in 77, was he? I mean, why do you need a support act? Do you really need one? I don't think Elvis needed one. Everybody was there to see Elvis. Anybody coming on beforehand delayed that. David, the one that stopped me seeing Elvis was the rock star newspaper Jerry Weintraub. Tony Tom Jones. No, I think Elvis might have felt intimidated if they put Tom Jones, because Elvis was intimidated by these people for some strange reason. He's like, all right, he's Tom Jones, but you're Elvis Presley. It is weird. It's hard to think who was around in 77. Who would have been really awful? See if we can rake up some name from the most unlikely, inappropriate. Lena Zavaroni. Who remembers Lena Zavaroni? Here, I always had a support act at the Pontiac Silverdome. All right, I didn't know that. The Sex Pistols. I like that. Oh dear. Boomtown Rats. Gary Glitter. Oh my god. You know, one artist that I think Elvis would have hit it off with, because when you think about it, they both approach music with a very similar, grandiose, operatic style theme. Queen. And of course, I can't remember his name either now. Jesus Christ, I know his name. Ah! Oh, this is ridiculous. Freddie Mercury. You think about it, the way Freddie Mercury sort of produced his music, very bombastic, very similar to Elvis. David, don't worry, I'm 64. Paul F. Parker was involved, it would have been the Wombles. Elvis and the Wombles. And you know what? Sad Elvis would have done it. Hugh, Frank Sinatra once opened for Willie Nelson. Oh. David, what else is left in the can? Yeah, the 77. That's the only thing, really, isn't it? The 77 special. Of course, one of the problems with the 77 special is the quality of the picture is not good. And whilst Elvis doesn't look good, his voice, of course, is fantastic. Though, as you can see in the special, there seems to be a drastic difference between the two shows and the way he looks. Here, you'll see the CBS recordings officially released before 2027 because they're out of copyright. Lila, would Elvis have tailored his set to a UK audience? That's an interesting question. Because, of course, Elvis had a lot of big hits here that weren't hits in America. What do you think of that? See, it's strange. As fans, we think we'd like him to have performed new songs and other songs that he didn't perform very often. But of course, when he did try that, it didn't work. And if you're going to see Elvis, you want to hear Heartbreak Hotel and Hound Dog and Suspicious Minds and things like this. So maybe you'd have brought those back the ones that he hadn't been performing. But that's an interesting question. Of course, if he tailored his set to the UK, he'd have to do Wooden Heart. Now, I like Wooden Heart, but David, the CBS TV special is something I'd like to edit. Yep, you can definitely make it much better. David, I got a CD called Elvis Sings a British Song. Well, I've seen that on eBay. Yeah, it's not expensive. I shall have to get it eventually. I did finally find a copy of Elvis's first album, the American release, in reasonably good condition. I paid for it, it never turned up. So I got my money back, but that was disappointing, because it's one I've wanted for a long time. And you see it for sale occasionally, sort of, you know, in very good condition, £500, £600. So I don't have to have perfect condition. I'm fine if it's not in perfect condition. Though I don't like torn covers or lots of writing on the covers. Mal, Ito eats an old McDonald's farm. I imagine if Elvis, as a joke, came out and performed all my greatest hits: Ito Eats, Old MacDonald's Farm, Yoga Is As Yoga Does, Dog's Life, Dating. What else? That's probably enough. And you know what? I'd still stand and cheer and applaud. Because as I said, it doesn't matter how bad the material was. It was performed so well. You think how the musicians must have felt. They're getting the chance to work with the king, and they have to record that. Tony, I'd still go absolutely to every show. David, did you get a copy of Omeros Pearl Harbor set? No, I still haven't. I have a long list of things I want, so I buy them as I see them. That doesn't seem to turn up that often, but it's certainly on my list. I've got the Red Spot stereo of California Holiday Coming. I still need 4 or 5, particularly the stereo Red Spots. So that's what I'm concentrating on at the moment. David, Elvis was so kind to a fault. Parker should have upped ticket sales, not sold his royalties off. Yeah. I can find very little positive about Parker. I think all Parker really did was catapult Elvis onto the top stage maybe a few months earlier than would have happened anyway, because I think it didn't matter who you put in charge of Elvis at that point. He was the next big thing, and he was going to be big no matter what. And record companies would have wanted him, as we know they did. TV shows would have wanted him. Concert promoters would have wanted him. Hollywood would have come knocking anyway. So to sort of say that Elvis only became big because of Parker is rubbish. His Release Me outtake is good, and Beatles Something is good, but Roger Whittaker's Last Farewell. Yeah. When I did my piece on, I did a video on them from Elvis Presley Boulevard. I said for me, The Last Farewell has always stuck out like a sore thumb. I look at it this way. Would we rather he hadn't recorded it? No, because then we'd have one less song. But yeah, I find it hard to hear Elvis singing, you know, when I come safe home again to England. Now I managed to get a mint copy of Elvis's Back Gatefold. And I got all my Red Spot stereo copies. So it turned up this time. Excellent news. Was it very, very expensive being a mint copy? Tony, have you watched the Red West interview at Mablethorpe? I may have done. I mean, I do search and watch everything, but the brain, it sort of disappears somewhere inside and little excerpts come out. So I can't say yes, definitely, but I'd be surprised if I haven't. I do sort of search around on YouTube to find anything that I haven't seen. Surprising how often new pieces of footage appear of Elvis. Man, £40, blimey. That was good. Lila, who breathed life into Elvis, into Vegas, more else the Rat Pack? Everybody that knows anything about Vegas says that Vegas was never the same after Elvis arrived, and it was never the same after he left. All the hotels and casinos takings went way up. People started traveling from all over the world, and it's been said many times by people that Elvis was a phenomenon in Vegas that hadn't happened before and wasn't repeated. The scale of things today, of course, is different because flying to America from around the world is a lot easier, a lot cheaper today, relatively, than it would have been then. So it's hard to compare things. You know, you see this nonsense today where they say, oh, some pretty obscure, pretty talentless nobody has broken the record for the most this in the charts or the most that sales of this. Of course, today, to do a record sale, you just get your phone and you press a button. Back then, you had to physically travel to a shop, buy a disc. So I don't think you can really compare things anymore. So if they come out with some nonsense about, oh, you know, some nobody, pretty talentless, has beaten Elvis's record of this. It's like when they said, who was it that, some record to do with Vegas that somebody had, was it sold more seats than Elvis or something? But then you have to think that Elvis was only in Vegas for what, 6 years? And this person had taken something like 20 years. So a lot of these comparisons aren't genuine. Somebody does make the point on the documentary that unless you were alive when Elvis broke onto the world stage, you cannot understand the impact. And she said it was like the world had been black and white and suddenly it was in glorious technicolor. That suddenly the teenager was born. That instead of liking the same music as your parents and dressing like your parents and having the same attitude as your parents, suddenly there was a divergence. Paul, just seen your live chat. Is it an all-nighter? How was the new movie? Okay, a quick recap for Paul. My initial impression, 7 out of 10. Is it brilliant? No. Does it have faults? Yes. Is it worth seeing? Yes. There's plenty of Elvis music and performances from the special in it. because there had been a rumor that they weren't allowed to use any footage, but that wasn't true. It's basically two halves. The build-up, they explain the background of what was going on in America. They look at Elvis's career up to that point. They very strongly say that Elvis had become completely irrelevant by this point, which, you know, you can't deny, but it was put over very strongly. But once it gets into the actual making of the special, then it goes up several gears. Interviews with various people that worked on the special, behind the scenes, the dancers, and Steve Binder, of course, who is the center of the whole thing. And excerpts from the special, outtakes, some nice bits about Elvis's humor, some stuff about how good looking he was from the women, the dancers. And one of the girls that sat by him when he sat down on the edge to sing Memories, one of those girls, they were sisters, the two girls either side. And as I said, worth the price of going and the effort of going. The one song that they showed in its complete form at the very end was If I Can Dream, and to see Elvis up on the big screen singing If I Can Dream was fantastic. Tony, nobody will ever come close to Elvis. No, they won't. No. I think, as they said, if you weren't there, the same is who was it? Was it Cary Grant? Was it Cary Grant? Said someday, what did he put it? Someday Elvis won't be there and people won't realise. I can't remember the quote. But I think that is going to, unfortunately, just grow in the future. I think a lot of people today don't have any great respect for what Elvis did because they have not got a clue what he did. You know, today you see people simulating sex in videos. So when they say, oh, Elvis was shocking because he wiggled his leg and sneered, it just goes over their head. They sort of think, well, that's pathetic. And I think that can only increase over time. Lila, yeah. Yeah, the scene with Elvis drinking champagne and slurring and on stage. I mean, why did they put that scene in? Why? Elvis's story is so incredible in its greatness and its darkness. Why invent scenes that didn't happen? Paul, yeah, when If I Can Dream started, I actually did get goosebumps. And sort of, you could feel the people in the things like, always like, whoa. And they showed the whole thing. So you imagine it, big screen, cinema sound. And that's how it ended. When he finishes the song, it just fades to black and then the credits come up. So Lila wants to know where everyone was, if you were alive, of course, on the day Elvis died. So this is a question that quite often comes up. I actually said to somebody, where were you, you know, on the day Elvis died? And she said, I wasn't born. It's incredible to, you know, he's been dead longer than he was alive. So for me personally, for anyone that doesn't know, I was 12. I would have been 13 in October. And again, as we were saying, how different the world was. Television closed down at night. There were, 3 or 4 news bulletins a day. There was no internet. There were no text messages, no mobile phones. And like probably everybody, it's burnt into my brain, so I can remember getting up in the morning. And I was sat with my mum, and she had a mail order catalogue, and she was going through it and saying, what do you want for Christmas? So going through that, and then the phone rang, and it was my mum's best friend. And my mum said, "He's fine, why?" And then she said, "Steve, Elvis has died." And of course, probably like everybody, my first reaction was, "No, he hasn't. Why would you say that? That's stupid." And my parents had one of those Wi-Fi systems, everything, built into a cabinet. So I went over and I put the radio on, and it was tuned to Radio 2. And Polk Salad Annie was playing. And my mum said I sort of sank down to my knees. Because I knew, why would they be playing Polk Salad Annie? So obviously. So I sat there listening, and then the, ended, and he came on and said Elvis had died. And I just stayed there by the radio, and it went blank after that. Paul was 7 on holiday in Blackpool. Ma was celebrating his 8th wedding anniversary. At least you never forgot when your wedding anniversary was. Was that the White Ray Wound? Lila, I remember my brother coming from work crying. Yeah. So Lila, was that the night before? Because I believe it was announced. I believe the evening news was on, and it was announced towards the end of it. Of course, I'd have been in bed by then. So I assume that was the night before. Yeah, Tony, it was on the 10 o'clock news. Stayed up all night listening to Radio Luxembourg. David, I think Elvis must have liked The Last Farewell because of its similarity to Danny Boy and I'll Take You Again, Kathleen. Yeah, maybe. It's strange what songs appealed to him that he wanted to record. It is a strange song for him to choose. David, where are you? Did you say? I'm only asking because my grandmother's family were from Dewsbury and they were Lunns. Never met any of them that I can remember. It was funny because I also remember in the days afterwards, people who knew I was an Elvis fan saying, and a lot of them weren't fans, saying how upset and shocked they were. Because said, it's like, I suppose it's like when the Queen died. He'd been part of everybody's life. Whether you were a fan or not, he was there. And it never occurred to you, especially at 42, that he was going to die. All right, in the newspapers, he was overweight. I think he was more bloated than overweight. If you notice on the 77 special, when he turns sideways on, his stomach and his face are bloated, but his ass and hips look perfectly, normal, as they always did. Lila, also mad to think that Lisa Marie isn't here. Yeah. I mean, again, we don't know with Lisa Marie, but I do find it odd that they say that she died of the blockage, and that the blockage in her colon was as a result of a surgery, and that it was a known side effect of the surgery. So if it's a known side effect, when she must have complained, why the hell doesn't someone flag up and say, check this? Maybe if she'd had a stable life and a doctor that knew her, they might have. That's the problem these days. Many years ago, you'd see the same doctor maybe your whole life, and they knew you. Today, you never see the same doctor twice. Well, today, you never see a doctor. You get an occasional phone call if you're lucky. David, the day Elvis died, I'd purchased Elvis in Demand on tape before I became aware. I remember going into town, it must have been a few days later, with my mum to buy the Moody Blue album. And we went into Littlewoods, into their cafe. So we sat down and I'm looking at the album. And across the next table, this lady sits down with her young son. And he pulls out the Camden I Got Lucky. We sort of nodded to each other, and I remember that. I remember thinking, I've already got that. Yeah. Can't think how many records I would have had then. Maybe 10 albums. It's funny looking back. I didn't have the Raised on Rock album. Never saw it in the shops. First time I saw it was on the back of the Promised Land album. And I thought, wow, what a fantastic looking album. Well, it's mad seeing Elvis being dressed to the nines just to rehearse when he could have worn just jeans and t-shirt. Yeah. Elvis was the ultimate fashion model. You think about it. No matter what you wore, he made it look fantastic and cool. Put some of those outfits on anybody else and they'd look ridiculous. He could pull anything off. David, anyone got the list of cinemas it was showing? Don't know if there is a list. Let's have a look. $68. Let's see if it gives a list. Please select a cinema. Right. Bristol, Coventry, Derby, Glasgow, Leeds, Leicester, Liverpool, Nottingham, Paisley, Peterborough, Reading, Teesside, another Bristol one, Cardiff, Dudley. Well, that's obviously not a complete list because I've just been to Cheltenham to see it. And somebody else said that they'd seen it in Shrewsbury. So maybe that's one particular cinema chain. Cinema Deluxe. No, I went to Cineworld. So probably you'd have to look at each chain. Tony, record sales went ballistic on the 17th of August, 77. They did. In fact, RCA had to contract other companies' pressing plants to produce Elvis records. He sold a phenomenal amount. That's why it's always seemed to me very odd that in America Way Down wasn't number one, and that more of his albums weren't in the charts. I think they just didn't bother. They were just so busy shoveling them out, they didn't bother keeping any records. David, when Leeds? Oops. Let's have a look. 3rd of August. It's on at Leeds. So right, it's not all been on at the same time. That's interesting. So 3rd of August, 7 p.m. Showcase Cinema Deluxe Leeds. I assumed that they were all going to be shown on this today. So there's still a chance then, if you want to see it, check out your local cinemas. Lila, have any of his girlfriends after Priscilla ever done interviews? Kathy Westmoreland, etc. Yes, you can find interviews on YouTube. Both sort of in the years after his death and quite recent ones. What's that channel with the English chap that lives in Ireland? In fact, he does his thing every Sunday evening. Can't think what it's called. But he has done a very good interview with Ginger Alden. And you will find some of the others interviews like Larry King and things like that, interviewing them. So they have done. Paul, just to lighten the mood, I'm having a hip replacement surgery on the 8th of August. Fingers crossed it won't be cancelled. Fit and healthy apart from my hip. 57. Right, fingers crossed for Paul. 8th of August. Hip replacement. So is that just getting old, or is it because of years of parachute jumping, or years of playing rugby, or an old war wound? Right, David, so you're going to go. So now you need to start a channel so you can tell us what you think of it. Well, luckily, so far, I don't need anything replacing them. My eyes are starting to be a problem. I had perfectly good eyesight until about 6 years ago. So in my job, I deal with a lot of medals. And of course, on British medals, the person they were awarded to, their details are impressed around the edge. And I used to be able to look at the edge and read it perfectly fine. Now all I see is a blur, so I need these. But I have noticed recently that even my distance vision isn't as crystal clear. It's not a problem yet, but it is a bit worrying. But if that's the worst thing that I have to think about, then I'm not going to complain. David Castleford. So how far away is Castleford from Dewsbury? Could they have got on their bike and ridden? My dad's father, I always loved this, he was the manager of the Dewsbury Opera House. I like the thought of Dewsbury having an opera house. And they actually moved here to Cheltenham because he was offered the managership of the Daffodil Cinema here in Cheltenham. And my dad became a cinema projectionist. The first film he ever showed was King Creole, so he bought the single. That's the first single I have in my collection. I've still got it. And it was at the cinema he met my mum, who was an usherette. Paul, 41 years of working as a plumber on my hands and knees. Family history also on both sides. All right. See, now you need to, 41 years of parachute jumping. You can make it up, nobody's going to know. David used to work Dewsbury Market, bought Kentucky Rain there. What's my name? Now, my name is Stephen Lewis. So they would have been Lewis then, because Lewis isn't the original family name. So my grandmother was Nellie Lunn, and my grandfather, so what name would he have had then? Was Lewis? No, that's his dad. It's all very confusing. My grandmother is Nellie Lunn, and she married Nat Lewis. But he only became Nat Lewis in 1941 because his name was Nathan Wyszynski. And his father's name was Louis Wyszynski. So he took Lewis as the family name. There you go. Who knows, we might be related somewhere along the path. Live, all Elvis album covers look like live albums. Yeah, there was no thought put into those covers. And what's frustrating is when it was a live album, it didn't have a picture from the concert on the cover. Well, and Paul's in Pontefract. Tony, I'm 65 and a bad knee and hip. No fun getting old. No. There's no fun, but it beats the alternative, which is not getting old. I'm sure Elvis would have been very pleased to have a bad knee and a hip and be 65. So we can't complain. David, I thought you were going to say Wayne Newton. One of my heroes when I was a young boy was Sir Geoffrey Boycott. I used to sit and watch test matches on TV with my dad. He loved his cricket, being a Yorkshireman. And Boycott was my hero. Funny how these chats always end up going off in weird directions. So if anybody just joined, they're thinking, what on earth has this got to do with Elvis documentary? Yeah. Oh, for anyone that remembers, what have I done with it? after my invitation to the Finnish ambassador's residence to present my book, I now have a foreword to add to it, written by the Finnish military attaché to the UK. He wanted to write a foreword for it, so that's now been incorporated. There's a few things that need correcting that I've spotted, but hopefully it'll be going to print. I'm thinking maybe next March to actually put it out, the anniversary of the end of the Winter War. David, Fred Truman was a Hardesty fan. Oh, Fred. Lila, would you wear an Elvis jumpsuit if you had to go fancy dress party? No. I know there are some good impersonators who do it sincerely, but ooh, I really don't like them. I think they harmed Elvis's image in the sort of general public. The general public, if you ask them what was Elvis like in the 70s, they don't think of that's the way it is. They don't think of Aloha from Hawaii. They think of an absolutely obese gentleman with a bad wig, with sideburns that sort of plastered on ear, in a ill-fitting, awful-looking jumpsuit, warbling my way with a pint of beer in their hand. I really don't like. And I would never. I mean, look at me. Am I going to carry off a jumpsuit? No. Somebody from France has arrived. Hello. Bonjour. Don't test my schoolboy French. Paul, Sir Geoffrey was also my hero. Asked for his autograph once age 14. He just been given that. He told me to fuck off. Fantastic. That's better than getting an autograph. Being told to fuck off by Sir Geoffrey Boycott. Oh, I love that. I would actually treasure that more than getting his autograph, to think, I love that. Oh dear. I think it's an absolute travesty that he's not on television commentating. I know women's cricket's all the thing now, but somebody like Boycott isn't allowed to be on the giving his opinions on that because of some nonsense. Anyway, David, best chats have loads of topics. What should go into next? Yes. She's arrived. On last Wednesday, she became a British citizen. So now she's one of us. She had to take her oath to the king.
How come I've got 1500 of my subscribers on my iPhone only, and you have this and this camera and this microphone,
Yeah.
which costed how much?
Cost. You can't speak English. You're a British citizen.
Speaking English, which cost how much?
They're saying hello to you.
It's no hellos. I do 1500 on my subscribers on my against Ukraine because I'm Russian.
No, we don't do politics.
Oh, we do politics. With this one standing here and shining with microphone for about £2,000,
I wish.
and you are
If I had £2,000,
complaining. That's it.
if I had £2,000, I wouldn't spend it on that.
Mhm.
Anyway, what have I missed?
Everything.
Oh, okay. Lyra, do you think Steve Binder is riding the shirt tails of the special? Maybe, but he deserves it. Let's face it, he's 90, so I don't blame him. It's got to be the greatest thing he ever did, and thank God he did it. He did a great, fantastic job. David, I only liked impersonators when Elvis was alive. Remember Rupert? No, I don't remember Rupert. The only person I remember doing Elvis when he was alive, of course, was Freddie Starr. So who was Rupert? David, boycotting Brian Clough. Tell it like it is, son. Yeah, we won't mention Brian Clough and his time at Leeds, because of course I grew up as a Leeds fan as well. We don't talk about that. I always say I don't like football. I'm a Leeds fan.
Anyone could put Elvis covers.
What?
Elvis cover.
Elvis cover?
Yeah.
What are you on about?
No. Cover song like Elvis. Playing Elvis.
Yeah. No.
Anyone's?
Not sure what you mean.
No. It's cover. It's like someone is playing Elvis, but newbies.
Was that English?
That was English. Newbies.
You wouldn't believe she's passed English exams, would you?
Elvis. Covers. It's English.
Oh, okay. I'm missing everything.
Yeah.
People are saying hello, congratulations.
Yeah, I'm British now. I'm sorry about that.
Not as sorry as we are.
Sorry, guys. But I'm British now.
She's British now. She speaks the English most goodiest.
Me speaking English now.
You're hijacking my broadcast.
Oh, fuck off.
Thank you very much. Oh dear. She might be British. The Russian is still inside her. Lila, does she like Elvis? No, she doesn't like Elvis. To wind me up, she calls him Elton John. Every time. Yeah, but you like Elton John. Why have you bought another Elton John record? Because it winds me up. David, tell us Lee Harvey Oswald innocent. It depends of what charge. I'm sure he was innocent of something. Paul, lovely to see your beautiful wife. Now, Paul, have you had your eyes checked recently? Do you need glasses like me? Oh, there was Elvis big in Russia. Now, she has told me that her dad worked as a nuclear scientist. So they did have a sort of slightly more privileged life than most people. And he had some Western records, but they were pressed into things like X-rays. And he did have an Elvis. She says she can only remember hearing a Rolling Stones record, but she said he did have Elvis. Be interesting to see them. But you sort of couldn't go into a shop and buy an Elvis record. I think only sort of very late on, during Perestroika and that, were specifically Elvis records struck. I do have one of the Russian ones here. David Raven Rupert. I can't say I've ever heard of him. Raven Rupert, just back from a world tour of Wigan, as we used to say. Paul, I'm a Leeds fan. Yes, Paul doesn't like football either. We don't talk about it. I'd resigned myself to the fact that they were going down well before the end of the season. Anyway, I just live on dreams of. See if I can still remember David Harvey, Paul Madeley, Paul Reaney, Norman Hunter, Billy Bremner, Joe Jordan, Alan Clark, Peter Lorimer, Trevor Cherry, Steve McQueen, Eddie Gray. Makes you weep. The Kilburn Kicks. I was watching the two Ronnies, but you two are funnier. Oh dear. She likes to play up being a Russian. Her accent becomes very strong. And then she... I warn her that can lead to misunderstandings, but... and something you have to get used to with a Russian is they are brutally honest. So never ask a Russian, does my new whatever look nice? Do you like my new haircut? Because you'll probably get, no, it doesn't suit you. And of course, to us British, that's like being rude and being, but it's like, but you asked my opinion. That's my opinion. Why would I lie to you? Took some getting used to. Milo, you can buy lots of Elvis stuff in Blackpool, but most of it is tap. Oh, speaking of tap, anyone who saw my live chat where I mentioned and showed the picture of the Elvis radio, I actually found one for sale on eBay. The exact one that I had. And I kept looking at it and my finger was hovering over by it and I thought, shall I? And in the end I resisted because I thought, £20 I could buy another album. Yes. But they are out there if anybody wants one. David. Yes. We won't mention Leeds. The Romanians are the same. I think Romanians are like that. Maybe it's an Eastern European thing. See, my wife and her friends, they always say to me that to them, the British are hypocrites because they never say what they mean. And I try to explain it's because it's built into us to be polite and be kind and not cause a scene. And, you know, I can see her point. If you ask somebody's opinion and they think your new whatever doesn't suit you, then it's probably more helpful to say, no, it doesn't look good on you, than to say, oh, yeah, it looks fine, whilst thinking, God, it looks terrible. Lilas is my wife an Elvis fan? No, she's not. But she's never really listened to him. If you asked her to name an Elvis song, she probably couldn't, even though she's heard the ones I played. Though when she came to see the film, Baz Luhrmann, that's the right name, isn't it? I remember the name. When she came to see his film, she was very impressed with the story, with Elvis. But who does she like? She likes Pink. And she likes Russian artists. Oops. What's happened there? It says my signal's unstable. See what happens when my wife turns up? Things become unstable. Now it's fairly good because she's left. The further away she gets, the better the signal gets. She was very sort of blasé and matter of fact about becoming a British citizen. So you have to go along. and swear an oath to the king and swear an oath to the country. All very official, big portrait of the king, the flags, the registrar of Gloucestershire, the deputy county lieutenant, etc., etc. And she was all very sort of matter-of-fact about it until it came to the oath of allegiance to the king. And then she became a little bit emotional, which I thought was nice. But, her dad encouraged her to learn English because he said, you know, the future is out there and English is the language. Sadly, he died 3 years ago. Anyway, have I got anything else that's come recently besides Elvis for Everyone? Can't think of anything, but then I lose track. I did rearrange. I tend to put my newer stuff up here whilst I'm sorting it out. I think that was the other recent thing. Oh, that flaming star, it's actually the Camden flaming star. It's from France. I've never seen it before. Wasn't aware of it, so I had to get that. As I said, it's been quiet lately for buying because I'm trying not to spend too much. Not doing very well. So how are we doing for time? 8:22. Everyone falling asleep yet? So, is there anything else Elvis going on at the moment? As I said earlier, we're all waiting for the How Great Thou Art FTD sessions to come out. And then when they do come out, I'm dreading another announcement from FTD. Hopefully they'll give us some breathing space. No more this year, please. Can't afford it all the time, especially when they announce 3 things at once. I wonder if we'll get, I suppose we will eventually, things like the Harem Scarum sessions. That's something to look forward to. I would like the Girl Happy sessions. Did I answer everyone? Oops. Let me just check. Oops. That seems to have stuck. Let me go back here. For some reason my chat seems to have stuck. What's going on? I shall have to switch to this one, I think. It stopped, so I'm behind. David, what do you think of people buying records and not playing them? Guilty as charged. Because I don't have a record player. Everybody's different. Everybody does their thing, you know, whatever makes them happy. Paul, Leeds were the best team in Europe. They were, absolutely. And they always seem to end up second and lose in the final. One of the traumas of my life was watching Leeds Bayern Munich in the European Cup final, when Leeds absolutely walked all over Bayern Munich and ended up losing. Bayern Munich only broke away twice into the Leeds half, and they scored both times. That's my memory. And of course, Lorimer's goal was disallowed for offside. Lila, did Elvis ever write a song? Yep. David, that's someone you never forget. Yep. About his mum. Elvis could have written songs. I'm sure he could have. Well, that proves it. But as I said, if you've got the, you know, the top songwriters throwing songs at you, of course Parker again bods that up. So people like Lieber and Stoller used to write for Elvis, and he basically put the kibosh on that. David, does she know I have been executive producer for Tatiana Rushkova? Oh. I shall try and remember to mention that to her. I have to say, you know, quite often she's listening to Russian artists. I don't know if it's just the artists that she chooses, but it does sound like the kind of music you can cut your wrists to quite often. I know the Russians have this deep tragedy. She's very much a drama queen on the tragic side. Sometimes I applaud because I'll come in and she's telling me this tragic thing that's happened to her, which of course isn't tragic at all. And I get this full acted out epic tragedy, and it ends with me applauding. Well done, well done. So there's only one Russian artist that I've heard that I actually look out for. And she's a singer that isn't particularly well known. I think YouTube is where she's well known. Diana Ankudinova. In fact, she did a performance of Cannot Falling in Love earlier this year, which is astonishing. Anyway, where were we? Lila, I remember watching Andrew Lloyd Webber documentary. He mentioned he wrote It's Easy for You. Yes, and they sent it to Elvis, and they never heard anything. And he said the first time they realised Elvis had recorded it was when Moody Blue came out. So I'm wondering if Elvis knew who they were. Kilburn, do you have a favourite Elvis period? Yeah, 53 to 77. Don't ask me questions like that. When people ask me what's your favourite album or what's your favourite film, like, I can't answer that. Paul, I'm dreading the negative connotations when the Priscilla film comes out. Me too. I wish to God she hadn't made it. It's about her. That's why she's made it. If she really truly cared about Elvis, she'd leave it alone. I think it can only do harm. Hopefully I'm going to be totally surprised. I've already seen a few sort of little articles appearing. That tied in with that ridiculous comment. Elvis killed himself because he couldn't stop going after 15-year-old girls. Makes me angry. That's what I'm scared is going to be dragged up. What can you say? What can you say? David, David, I've just started to catalogue my collection on Discogs. Done 3. I think I've done about 10 and I gave up. I had the same idea, but I have actually now created a database. But when I get something new, I think, oh, I'll do that later. And then later comes along and I think, did I do that? So I'm sure now there's things in there that I haven't added. Mal, I think Girl Happy will be the next FTD soundtrack. I hope so. I've been trying to find a copy, one of the copies from South America, because the title, and I just love it, is Loco por las Muchachas, which I'm assuming is something like crazy for the girls or something crazy for the chicks, something like that. I like that. I do like the foreign sleeves with, you know, the foreign titles on. Loco por las Muchachas. Is there a version? Because I'm loco por las muchachas. So I'd be up for that. Yeah. Girl Happy is the next one. Now, is it Girl Happy? There is a song where Elvis recorded an extra verse, and they know it exists, but it hasn't been released. Can't think. Paul shaming me. I know people who buy Elvis vinyl and don't even own a turntable. Lila, yes, that's the problem. Now, whenever somebody comes up with this crap about Elvis and young girls, my response would be, where are they then? Where are these women coming forward to say, I want compensation, Elvis did this when I was a little girl? Where are they? It's total crap. All right, Elvis met Priscilla when she was, what was it, 14, 15? But as somebody said quite recently, back then in the South, that was not considered weird. Today, it's weird. Yet again, they're going to transplant modern thinking onto the past, which never ends well. Paul, Leeds finished second in the league 5 times. Yeah, I know. And at one time, they're absolutely robbed by an absolutely outrageous refereeing decision. If you remember, when everybody stopped because the guy was clearly offside and the referee waved play on and he went and scored. Oh. Nigel, hello. Now, of course, if somebody comes on now and says, so what did you think of the documentary? So if there are people who've come on since who haven't heard, speak up and I'll do a quick summary. Lila, what song would you like to hear an AI Elvis sing? I'm not sure about this AI. I listened to the Poor Man's Gold one. Now, the fact that Elvis had a go at recording that, damn fire engine, if only the fire engine hadn't turned up, he probably would have got through it. So that was interesting. I suppose if they did Fire Down Below, I have heard We Had It All, which now seems unlikely that Elvis did actually record, despite some people saying they were in the studio when he recorded it. I think it's more likely, now I've heard, that he played the original in the studio and sort of sang along to it, but decided not to record it. That sounds more likely, because I think if he had recorded it, we'd have heard it by now. But I'm not sure about this AI. Because, of course, all right, it can sound like Elvis, but it can't know what phrasing Elvis would have used, what emphasis he would have put, how he would have tackled it, what tempo he'd have used. Because, of course, he totally changed songs. He turned them into Elvis songs. Nigel, what 10 top Elvis albums? Now, Nigel, you should know better than to ask me this question. I hate questions like that, because choosing one over another, how can you do it? Of course, From Elvis in Memphis is going to be there. That's the way it is going to be there. King Creole's going to be there. Elvis Country. Promised Land, because Promised Land is a special place for me. You see, then I would want one of my top 10 would have to include the Sun Sessions. You see, as I go through it, and then I think, but what about this one? What about that one? So my top 10 will probably change daily, but there are some that would always be in it. Lila, do you remember when That's the Way It Is was about to hit the cinemas? COVID hit. Where is the re-release? I don't know. 100th anniversary. In a way, we're spoilt by having DVDs and that, because we can watch it any time we want, so we tend not to watch it. When it used to be a big event, you know, whenever an Elvis film was shown on television, I would take a day off work if it was being shown in the afternoon. Absolutely made a point that no matter what, you watched it. Now I've got them all on DVD. I rarely watch them. I made a point a couple of months ago of sitting down and sort of watching them all, which was enjoyable, though at times a bit difficult. There were a few where I was thinking, oh, please hurry up, please hurry up. Mal's off. Now you've completed your red spots, what are you going to move on to next? Sun Records. Paul, did you see the 3-part series, The Loves of Elvis? No, I decided I didn't want to see it. And I'd heard about David Stanley. What an absolute prick. The damage he could have done Elvis, because that will be dragged out. I'm absolutely sure of it. A few months back, looking for Elvis stuff, I came across a person who did a video. Thankfully, has very few subscribers, and not many people had watched it. But it was all about how Elvis was a paedophile. And there were a few comments on there like, oh, you go girl, tell the truth, it's about time the world knew, things like that. And I think, oh God, if she's done that and she sees that quote and she sees this film, and people might start searching, Nigel, yep, all good Elvis albums. There isn't an album that I wish he hadn't released. Even Harem Scarum. I would rather have all those songs and not have one of them. Paul, talking of 100th anniversary, can you believe it's only 12 years to Elvis's 100th birthday? Yeah, don't say things like that. I suppose that's when the press will take note of him again, and there might be a little buzzer around again. I was thinking about it. With Elvis's records, CDs, second-hand market, he's probably still outselling the vast majority of artists today. Because the vast majority of artists sell very few things. But he's never going to get any recognition for it, for any record sales today. David, the sun will jump on Priscilla movie, God help us. That's what I'm worried about. But as I said, where are these young girls then, who now be elderly ladies? Where are they? They're not out there because they don't exist. It's very easy to accuse somebody of something they haven't done. Of course, with Elvis not being around now, he's not going to sue them. When I saw that video I mentioned, I thought, you know, if somebody from Elvis's estate saw that, they should make a point of taking out a lawsuit against that. I mean, this person had no knowledge of Elvis. She had no evidence. She had no facts. It was slander. But apparently you can't slander a dead person. Paul, Harum Scarum was poor. It was, but would you rather not have it? I'd rather have the film and the soundtrack than not have it. The world is a better place for every Elvis song being in it. Can I think of a song where that isn't true? One doesn't come to mind. David Stanley has Parkinson's. Great karate chop on that tiger. Not sure what that means. Paul, I have the mono and stereo red spots. Oh, Harum Scarum. Harem Holiday. Of course, the is it the mono has the spelling mistake on it. Lila, did you go to the UK Arena gigs when it was on the screen? Was it banned live? No, I didn't. Nope. I decided not to. I did talk about this once on a video. When I was aware of being an Elvis fan, I say 73. My mum said I was an Elvis fan when I was about 3 years old. I won't go into that story again. I actually had a money box that I put coins in because I was saving up to go and see Elvis. And when I started work, I carried on saving. And in 84, I went to Graceland. But I was very aware the whole trip that this should be going to see Elvis perform. I should be seeing him. Because I swore I would go. And I went. But I wasn't going to be seeing him. I suppose that would have been the closest. But it wasn't him. But I'm sure everybody that went had a fantastic time. And I probably would have enjoyed it, but I just Yeah, David said it was fantastic. I'm sure it was. And if I'd have gone, I'd have probably loved it. But my heart wasn't in it. David didn't fancy the orchestra gigs, no. And to be honest, I don't like the. In fact, I've got the orchestra albums. I've never played them on CD. Never played them. David, it's our greatest loss not seeing him. Yeah. Rockstar convinced me he was coming. He was coming. I assume in '78 the whole thing was being arranged. The beginning of the arrangements was in place. Ruiner, I saw that show. Brilliant. Most of the original band present. Oh, fantastic. You've got a concert ticket that states Elvis in concert. I hadn't thought of that. That is good. Paul, I lived in LA for 3 years. Oh, wow. Now, does that mean you've got some souvenirs tucked away? Have you got Elvis's U-bend hidden away somewhere? So when I went over to America, we went to Tupelo. We visited Nashville and then stayed in Memphis. It was great going back then because it still looked and felt like Elvis's home. It hadn't been commercialized. His cars were just parked out the back of the house. David, did you go to the fan club? I did, yeah. Where did I put? I made the big mistake of tidying my room up, which is always a big mistake because when it's untidy, I can find everything. So there's my original Elvis fan club badge. I've still got my membership card somewhere. And in fact, this is the current membership card. The official Elvis Presley fan club of Great Britain. It's weird, if you look, in fact you'll find on YouTube, they say, oh, the oldest fan club in Britain is the Queen fan club. Where on earth have they got that from? The Elvis fan club was going way before. David, my son lives in the USA. Is that still a good thing? It does feel like the world's having the Western world is having a nervous breakdown. Insanity seems to rule at the moment. Like, imagine if the Barbie film had come out with the Elvis movie on the same day. Yeah, I've heard some bad things about the Barbie film. Modern bloody way of viewing the world is very warped. David, we drove to Memphis, walked Union Avenue and Beale. Yeah, we went to Beale Street. Visited Lansky's. Couldn't afford anything. I was really travelling on a budget, and the money that I took with me, I thought I'm going to buy bootlegs, because living in Cheltenham back then, there was no source for buying them. I'd seen them in magazines, but I'd never, so I filled my suitcase up with them. Paul, original house had gone when I got there. A few pics, which I'd taken my phone back in those days. Wish I'd had my phone. Yeah, it was a totally different world back then, wasn't it? David's got his cards and Elvis Monthly. Remember Elvis Monthly? See, this is what we miss here in the UK. Every month we got a little Elvis magazine with what he was up to and rumours, reports, stories about the past. That was going a long time, that magazine. It's hard to believe that they could come up with something every month. David Cliff won't be happy about that. Right, 10 to 9. Suppose I should start thinking about bringing this to an end. David, we were free, not following guide about. Got up, left the woman, he had a gun, didn't complain. Lila, would you do Memphis Graceland again? Obviously, I would like to see Graceland again, but the thought of that flight. I used to really enjoy flying. I did a lot of it. But these days, I don't know. I used to enjoy the whole thing, right from leaving the house, traveling to the airport, sitting in the airport, queuing up. I loved it all. Flying, love flying. But I don't know, maybe it's because I'm getting older. Thought of sitting on a plane for hours. Now, if somebody wants to invent a transporter like on Star Trek, I'm up for that. See, this is a problem with my wife's family. This is it, when you're either living abroad or you're married to somebody from another country, because I lived in Finland for 3 years, and every time it came to holiday time, you felt obliged to go home and see your family. You wanted to see them, but it meant you never actually went on holiday anywhere else. So now, of course, whenever, oh, let's go abroad, okay, we'll go and visit her family. Of course, with the current situation, that's not going to happen. Because since her dad died, her mum has moved to be with her daughter-in-law, because sadly her brother's died recently. And they all live in Sevastopol in Crimea. So she can fly there by flying to Turkey or somewhere like that first and then getting a flight on. I can't go. And it wouldn't feel right to go with the way things are at the moment. Paul, yeah, I've seen lots of like runs of Elvis Monthly on eBay. It's like the specials. I used to have the specials. I don't know what happened to them. I keep looking and thinking, oh, shall I buy them? But I'm a completist. If I buy one, I'm going to have to buy them all. And I want to spend the money on records and CDs. So that's what's keeping my impulse in check. Because I see a lot of things and I think, oh, I'd like that. And I think, no. David, good night. 5 minutes and I shall be off. Let me just have a look here. 2 hours 25. I watch people do live streams and they're very disciplined. They get off, but I just enjoy chatting. So they can go on. So anybody who came on late and wanted to see about the documentary, sorry, you missed it. But you'll be able to go back and see what I said. Lila Elvis will always be the king of rock and roll. Not just rock and roll, Lila. Rock and roll is actually a small part of Elvis. Well, I shall have to get off to bed. David, did you get a copy of the MS Gardens FTD? No, it is on my list. Nigel, good night. It is on my list, and the Aloha, and of course there's the new Aloha set coming out and album. The problem I've got, I want these things and I intend to get them, but my priority is the original albums. And that's not just UK. As you'll know from my videos, I like the albums from around the world. And there's so many of them, really interesting things, that if it's a choice between them or getting the new MSG, then they take priority. I saw recently a lot of Spanish singles. The thing I like about the Spanish releases is they put the song titles and that in Spanish. It always shocked me the French didn't do that very much, because the French are very sort of protective of their language and not keen on English infiltrating. So, Paul, thank you. I don't schedule my live chats because I don't really know when I'm going to do them. But one thing I will say, which isn't true of a lot of channels that I watch, which I enjoy, not just Elvis ones. If I say it starts at 7, it starts at 7. I do watch some people who are notorious for saying we'll start at 7 and they turn up at 7:45. Not Elvis channels. David, have you watched your Blue Hawaii Blu-ray? No, I've tried to play it and my player won't play it. I've got a very old player. So that is actually something I need to sort out. Find out why it won't play it. Because I thought it would. Right, 2 minutes. So again, it's to add to my long and seemingly growing list of things I need to sort out. So there's 13 people watching, it says. I think there were 17 at one point. So the others probably fell asleep. Paul, do you have an email? Yeah, isn't it on my community page? I'll have a look. If it's not, I'll put it on there. In fact, I can put it on here, can't I? If I can remember it. Hold on a second. Okay. 17. 3, 8, 8, 6, Okay. Let me just double check that. Make sure. Right. There you go. That's the email where you can get me. Wayne's TCB Vinyl, hello. Do you own the Artist of the Century LP set? I don't. I've seen it on eBay for sale a few times, sometimes at ridiculously high prices, and other times at quite reasonable. So again, it's another thing that's on my list, along with the Elvis Live in Las Vegas vinyl set. I've got all the other vinyl sets for the box sets. I never got that one. Paul, you will get sick of my emails now. I'll get my wife to answer you. Watch out. She's a KGB trained assassin, I'm sure of that. So no, I don't have the Artist of the Century LP set, but it is on my radar as something to get. It's funny, I don't remember it coming out. Right, it's gone 9, so I think that'll be it. I've been informed that I've got to go tomorrow to the Duke of Gloucester Barracks to do my work for the Royal Logistic Corps. So I'm not getting a Monday off this week. So thank you to everyone. I just bought that picture disc, £70. Thanks for everyone for turning up. Hopefully it wasn't too boring. And trying to think what my schedule is. Problem is I can never tell in advance what's happening. So till next time, it's bye for now.